Then afterwards, one month later, we're up here. 6 months later, we're here. 1 year later, pretty much the same. Talking about metaphors analogously, after the experience, in the debriefing. Greater change than not using metaphors. There, at 1 month after. 6 months after, the decrease, still a little bit better. But then a year later, totally the same as the group that didn't use metaphors. All right? Using metaphors and referring to them just before the experience. So just the framework, nothing in the debriefing. Same as the ones that did them afterwards. But look at this. They retained the experience longer. And even the point there. And one of the reasons is that generally speaking, and this is done from post interviews with these groups, generally speaking, when you frame the experiences, the clients feel they have more control over the situation. And the more clients own their therapeutic experience, the more likely they are to retain it and reproduce the changes in therapy on their own, separate from the therapist. Now, we talk about metaphors before and after. Huge change, huge retention over a year. So what this told us is, metaphors work. They work best if you have to do in the framing, but when you can use them in capture before and after, that's when you start to see the change be the greatest.
Can you say it again? There's third line.
Third line. 1, 2, 3. This one?
Yeah.
This is metaphors just in the debriefing.
Yeah.
So where we talked about how the activity was going to be like your corporate work at life. That's this one. There. But the afterwards, it created just the same as we did before, but the clients didn't retain it as well. They didn't keep it over 6 months and a year later. It did much, much better when we introduced the activities as the workplace piece in a metaphorical place. Okay? So that's just kind of like a piece on there. Remember we talked about, this has got the 5 frameworks that we have. Generally speaking, on there, when you're doing recreation with adventure, learning by doing, and second generation learning by telling, that generally is seen in recreational experiences. We are focused on getting people to feel better about themselves, to recreate life's vital source, whatever keeps you going, make that stronger. As we move into education, that's where primarily you're seeing front-loading and debriefing. That's the strength of adventure education. When you start to get into therapy and corporate work, then you start to see more of the framing experience. It doesn't mean that therapy doesn't have some recreational pieces in it, and it doesn't mean that first generation can't be as strong as there. It just means the majority of work across program type will be split up like that. Okay? So first generation, learning, mountains speak for themselves, speak for the mountains, reflect on the mountains, be directed toward the mountain, and then frame the mountain as your life. Each of those generations generally have more complexity to them, but generally that's kind of the way it goes. Yes. Training and development. So like for corporate work, training and development is just another, like human resources, HR, and business corporation. Any questions? Good questions. Any questions? Any need for clarity? Because I can't always be here with you. I can be here today. But I can't be here every other day. Do you have any questions, Bill, about the 26 chapters in that book you have? Now's the time to ask.
So from the previous slides, seems to give people impression that the next generation is better than the rest of the facilitation skills.
Only only in the context of when you do it well, and you have the focus of training and development. If the focus of what we're doing is more educational or more recreational, maybe we don't want to use this. We want to use a debriefing of reflection style that's more in line with what the goals of that particular group is. So generally speaking, and you see it across the world, very little framing is ever done in educational programs. Outward Bound, expeditionary learning programs, which is kind of the new twist from Outward Bound on Outward Bound in the schools. Project adventure programs in there. Generally, they don't use this type. This type is primarily used in therapeutic and corporate.
From my experience, a lot of people are reading your book and some of Chris' book,
Yeah.
and they read about facilitation skills, and they kind of think of it as like a degree of like the sixth generation is better than the first generation.
Yeah.
They all seems to get that impression and kind
Yeah.
of
Well,
look down on the other type of facilitation
we
skills.
need to do a better job of editing that. Because the message that I would say is you need to match the facilitation style that matches the population that you work with, and matches the goals that you're going to focus on.
Maybe you can put in a circle.
Yeah? Might be another way to look at it. It's very important to kind of like, in this style, you have to know enough. One of the things is that in order to use this style, you have to know enough about the client's story to match it with a parallel adventure experience on there. So that's a piece there. If you don't know enough about the client's story, then choosing the adventure experience, that one and first and second step, is kind of a hit or miss type of endeavor. And you may just miss. The thing is, I'm saying, if you miss that, then you can still go to third generation to save you. So if you try to frame an experience and you just blow it, you can always reflect on it in the experiential learning sense. But that's a good point. It's not that one style is better than the other, it's what style fits the client and the group that you're working with.